Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. Russia's accusing Ukraine of attempting to assassinate President Vladimir Putin with 2 drones that attacked the Kremlin overnight. The Kremlin calls it a terrorist act and said Russian military and security forces disabled the drones before they could strike. There were no immediate comments from Ukrainian authorities. The UK's Guardian is reporting a former official to Ukraine's president dismissed the claims as lies. An image on social media shows smoke billowing from the Kremlin. The Kremlin says Putin was unharmed and carrying on his regular duties. Meanwhile, at least 2 people were killed in Ukraine from Russian missile strikes in Kherson. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Finland to meet with prime ministers of 4 Nordic nations as part of his effort to secure greater firepower for Ukraine's armed defenses. Sudan's warring military factions have agreed to extend a 7-day truce, but fighting continues on the ground. Jans Larky is a spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs.
We need the guns to fall silent for 2 reasons. First of all, because we need civilians protected, and clearly they are not. We see a lot of civilians being killed in the hundreds. Secondly, we need that safety in order for us to, for humanitarian organizations to safely get to those people in need, or the other way around, safely for people to move to places where they can access aid.
The civil war has upended life in Sudan and killed more than 550 people. Nearly 5,000 have been wounded. Palestinian health officials say at least 1 person was killed and 5 wounded in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. That strike came during hours of fighting between Israel and Palestinian militants, following the death of a Palestinian political prisoner who was on hunger strike. A ceasefire has since been reached and is holding. The in-custody death has shined a spotlight on Israel's practice of administrative detention, that's jailing people without charge. Rami Al-Magari reports from Gaza.
Khader Adnan died in Israeli custody after a nearly 3-month-long hunger strike. Adnan is a senior member of the Islamic Jihad group in the West Bank. Israeli authorities has placed him under administrative detention without specific charges several times over the past 2 decades. Hamas claimed responsibility for a barrage of rocket fire into nearby Israeli towns. Ismail Radwan is a senior leader of Hamas in Gaza. He said Israel provoked the latest outbreak of violence.
They must stop attacking our prisoners and the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
According to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights in Gaza, there are currently 700 Palestinian prisoners, including 6 children, currently under administrative detention without charges. For Pacifica Radio, I am Rami Al-Magari in Gaza.
In the U.S., the Federal Reserve meets today and is expected to raise interest rates for a 10th time to bring down inflation. The move has been criticized as a path towards recession and in part at fault for recent bank failures. Turmoil in the banking sector and political battles over the nation's borrowing limit could further weaken the economy if banks restrict lending, and financial markets could tumble on fears of a default of the nation's debt. House Democrats are planning a move to allow consideration of a debt ceiling hike, according to Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. A memo to party members says Ranking Member Jim McGovern has filed a special rule that would allow for floor consideration of a bipartisan measure to hike the debt ceiling and avoid a default. It comes as Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Joe Biden are at an impasse. Republicans have demanded spending cuts in exchange for raising the debt ceiling, which the president is rejecting. Treasury Secretary this week warned the U.S. faces a default by June 1st if the nation's borrowing power isn't lifted. Ethics in the Supreme Court was the topic of a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing Tuesday. Christopher Martinez reports.
Democrat Dick Durbin of Illinois chairs the committee.
The highest court in the land should not have the lowest ethical standards.
He described one justice, meaning Clarence Thomas, accepting luxury trips and real estate worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from a billionaire with interests before the court.
It falls short of ethical standards we expect of any public servant in America. And yet the Supreme Court won't even acknowledge it's a problem.
Durbin had invited Chief Justice John Roberts to attend the hearing, but Roberts declined. That displeased Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island.
Justices read the ethics rules in unique and eccentric ways, And when they're caught out of bounds, they refuse to allow any investigation of the facts.
This is not about making the court better. This is about destroying a conservative court. It will not work.
Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is the ranking Republican on the committee. He says there is a concentrated effort by the left to delegitimize the Roberts Court. He may be right about it not working in the sense that Republicans hold enough votes to block the various Democratic bills proposed to create Supreme Court ethics standards. Reporting for Pacifica Radio News KPFA, I'm Christopher Martinez.
I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.